Hello, and welcome to the Q&A&Critique number 70. I'm here with some good friends of mine here on the internet in the Discord server of Bforartists. With Slink, I'm kind of drunk, and Plebes. Thank you for connecting. I really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed today as we do two topics with an extra two pieces of art that we're going to take a look at. One is conceptual, work in progress, and the other one is a very cool black and white piece done by Slink. And the concept piece is done by I'm Kinda Drunk. And after that, we're going to be taking a quick walkthrough of a layout process as I set up some more shots of the Android repair shop on episode 4, which is the 5th song of the album. And after that, we're going to be taking a look at what's new and what's coming into Bforartists 3.4, which is slated to be released in December, around the same time as Blender 3.4. So there's a lot of goodies coming, including some extra nice work done by Iyad, and some extra little details and work done by, many details really, by Rainer, and a tiny bit from me. So let's begin, I suppose, and let's take a look at the first piece. So Slink, how are you? Would you like to come onto the microphone and show your piece?
Hello, yes. I'm doing very much fine.
Great. So let me load up the piece as well. Here it is. So we got this character. And let me place it here and up close. There he is. Let me full screen it. So we have this character here. He's sitting in a grey background and he's shining lights, and he's got this this meme called Giga Chat, I suppose, and he's sitting on a pose.
Yes.
Kind of a powerful guy to some degree. Mm-hmm. So tell us more about this piece.
So I basically ripped the rig and model from Titanfall 2. It's like one of the multiplayer pilot. They're like, because ripped game rigs are like shit. So yeah, I didn't change that, but it was shit.
Yeah, they're usually just mostly deformer bones, no control rig, correct?
Yeah, it's not only that, it's like super tiny bones. Like very tiny. It's super small. It's like super hard.
Oh, it's mainly because of the scale of the world that they're using compared to Blender, I assume.
Maybe, but also they aren't orientated right, so like, fuck.
Ah, right, yeah, you're right, yeah. Because some people have Z up in a different direction.
Yeah.
Like, Y up. Or X up. Some of them have X up or X front.
Yes. So yeah, then I post them somehow. Then I look like a lot of gameplay footage from Titanfall 2. They have like this very strong glare from everything which is like emissive.
Yes, this
and
glare. It's pretty cool.
I basically redid it in Blender.
So how did you make the stretched flare effect?
I use the glare node, with streaks, and only 2 streaks.
And does it go sideways automatically?
It is like that by default, like, yeah.
Oh wow. And I also noticed you have a tiny bit of grunge on the lens.
Yes.
How did you do that?
I basically took the image, did the luminance key, then used that, blurred it, and used that as a mask for the grunge.
Masked photo grunge stuck on the lens. Oh, that's effective. Yes. Subtle, but it works really nicely. Right here. Well, nice work in the compositing. And why did you choose to go black and white? What's the inspiration there? Is it just to follow the format of the meme?
Yes.
Which is...
yes.
Okay, which is what we have here. So, the Giga Chad. Yeah, kind of completely unrealistic expectations of anyone.
Yes. Like here you can see like the glare.
Yes, it's exactly like that.
How to read streaks.
That's true. Well, nice
Also
work.
looks very cool in game.
So how many hours have you managed to get inside the game of Titanfall?
On Steam, I have a record of 136.1 hours.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
It is. It is also an amazing game.
All right.
Currently on sale on Steam.
Oh, really? Okay.
$5.
This is not an endorsement. Okay, good. Well, I'm glad you can do that. Just recently, I saw on Epic Games, the Star Wars Squadrons game is free
Yes.
at the moment.
Oh, it's a very good game.
Yeah. But games aside, I have no time to play games. I only do 3D. But we have another piece here done by I'm Kinda Drunk. So I'm going to just quickly load up your piece. And where is the piece? Hang on, I saw it just recently. Oh, here it is. So let me just download. Downloads. There we go. That's loading. Okay, so what we have is another grey background with a heart and it's pulsing. Okay, so I'm Kinda Drunk. You mentioned earlier that this is a concept, and also I want to say hello, Marty. Welcome. We're currently streaming live. We just had a look at an art piece by Slink, which was really fun. A very good rendition of the meme, and a very cool lens flare effect, which I actually will take note and try to replicate later. So I'm Kinda Drunk. Tell me about this concept. What is the inspiration and what would you like this for?
Well, the inspiration was a frustration, actually. I wanted to make an homage to my girlfriend that passed away on my birthday, actually, but it's another story. That's not that related. Yeah. But I wanted to make art, and I wanted to make a 2D shaped heart. And I struggled for hours, literally hours, to make a 2D shaped heart. And then I realized I was wasting so much energy that I should probably just make a heart realistically. It would be easier. And then I started this, and I used, for the textures, I used Dream Textures, you know, the stable diffusion generator for textures.
Yes.
I worked semi-procedurally PBR with the AI texture. So it was a mix of classical PBR texturing with the 3D image.
Wow. So is this an add-on that you used, or a separate service that creates the textures?
No, it's an add-on by Carl Skarsten, which is what's called Dream Textures. It's available for free. You just need Hugging Face models, and it's quite easy to set up. You guys just look for Carlson Katri, I guess. I don't know how to pronounce it correctly, but it's Carlson and Dream Textures.
I found it here on the Blender Market, and also on GitHub, so I can share that into the chat.
GitHub. Yeah, GitHub is easier.
Version 0.8 is the last one, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
The good about Dream Textures is that you can use like multiple different like AI models. You can have like stable diffusion and like waifu diffusion installed at the same time. That's pretty neat if you want to do like anime and then general stuff.
That's super useful. I've been wanting to integrate AI more into my workflow. Lately, I've been just using dreamstudio.ai, pretty much, on the internet to generate some images for my animatics. But I haven't actually used it in the 3D space yet. So it's kind of interesting.
Dream Textures also have like a feature that it like connects to a cloud service, which also runs Stable Diffusion. So if you basically don't have the compute power, you can use like cloud power, I guess.
Yeah, I definitely do not have the computer power to run this. I tried once because I do have 6 gigs of video RAM, but it's barely enough, and you need a lot of RAM to do so as well.
Well, I'm not sure about that because I used an RTX with only 8 gigs of VRAM and it worked decently.
I don't have an RTX card yet, but
No, but how much VRAM at all do you have?
only 6 gigs. It's like it's bordering on the lower end of the bare minimum that you need to make it work locally.
No, you can do it. I think you can do it.
Alright, I'll try again. I'll try this add-on and we'll see how it goes.
There's a Stable Diffusion build which like runs on 4 gigabytes
Oh, really?
of VRAM, but it's like the slowest one, so it basically sacrifices speed for VRAM.
Right.
But
Okay.
I don't know if it is a model on Hugging Face, so I just know that it exists.
Interesting. Well, I have to do some more investigation and find out. Anyway, so I've got a question for you. Thanks for the heart piece. But wait, my second question that I answered, so your inspiration is kind of a tribute. You wanted to work the heart. You got the textures from Stable Diffusion. So this art piece, is this to commemorate the memory? Where do you think to take the heart?
I've got this idea that living is like a controlled internal bleeding, because our blood is flowing, it's pumping, it's there, and if it comes out, we're suddenly dead. So this duality and simplicity of life and death, it motivated me to what's the thing that makes us alive? You know, what it is to be alive, what it is to have a heart beating. It's so weird, you know. If you come to stop and think about it, we all have hearts beating and pumping blood. This is insane.
That's a good point.
The heart stops, and we're not a person anymore, and we're no longer here. So I wanted to make this to show that we're still here, you know. Just because my girlfriend passed away doesn't mean that the love that we shared was in vain or was all for nothing, you know. Just what we're talking about. So in a way, she's still alive, even though if it's anymore in render, you know.
Makes sense. Well, this is very beautiful. I like that concept. I had to confront that in a smaller scale with my pet cat just recently. But I understand the sentiment, and yes, it's kind of a miracle that we all live. So it is nice. So I have an additional question. Since this is a concept of the heart, and your concept is very nice, you have a very clear message, a very clear, beautiful inspiration, and an idea of where you want to take the heart. What, for this particular art piece and animation, what would you like to add to the piece to help you tell the story? What do you think? What more work do you need to do?
I want to add some mainframes and create like a hospital in the back, like this maybe, to show to make like since I used AI, I want to make like a futuristic lab which basically uses the heart as a machine. I sent you the references for the lab. And also, I created these references using the Stable Diffusion, which was incredible. I have to look so many times in the internet for references. I could just create 15 different concept arts, you know?
This particular shot reminds me of you working in the BlackBerry factory in Canada 10 years ago.
You probably could use that picture. AI is crazy nowadays. Simple everything.
Yeah, it makes it quick to get the inspiration. It seems like it solved the whole problem of artist block.
And a fantasy, like Burst, for instance.
Yes.
I mean, like computers, it's another tool, and we have to use it because you're not a. It's harsh to say that you're not a painter just because you don't make your own ink. You know.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, Slink, you actually shared the node trees for the actual lens distortion. That's great. And the colored version of the image. So let's take a closer look.
Colored is beautiful.
Yeah, it looks good. It's a nice reutilization of an asset in an existing asset. So your lens distortion, just to get the lens, you're adding in the lens flares, which is a separate pass. And then you used a luminance key on the high end to multiply and dilate itself, the matte, into the streaks. So you kind of cut off the light parts of the scene and you're driving that, multiplying itself and driving that with an erosion into the streaks. So the streaks, you have 5 iterations and you have 2 streaks, which are angle offset of 0, and the fade is very high. That's how you get them stretched out. Okay. Then you push those glares into another glare with a fog to get the bloom, and you add that back inside the image. And you used another fog glow, so you got 2 blooms. One is a very large bloom, very big, and the other one is a very small bloom with a high. Okay, and you add that back in, add that back in. Thanks. Simple enough, but very effective. Did you use the real-time compositor for this?
No. No. The real-time compositor doesn't support glare nodes yet, still.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's fine. So I have a question now for everyone here. Are you guys excited for Blender 3.4, and do you know what's coming?
Oh, I'm excited, but I have no idea what we're gonna get.
No idea what we're gonna get. Okay, so let me just get my dates correct, and I will do a quick walkthrough of what's coming to both Bforartists and to Blender 3.4 before I move on to the next step, which is going to take a bit longer. But I want to give you a sneak peek of something that we have in development. So in sculpting, typically you have all of these brushes, like a whole wall of brushes. But right now we've been working on a system so that these brushes can be split up into your own panel and our own tab. So right now, Iyad, he's been working on this, and I've been sponsoring this development so that we can actually, just like we have with the vertex paint colors in the texture paint, we could say, for example, I have a drawing brush, and maybe I have, where's another tool? So I create another brush, and I might call this a wide brush. And maybe I create another brush here, and I'll call this the thin brush. And I change the settings to make it really thin. I choose the wide brush again, and I make it really thick. And maybe I'll make another brush setting with a texture or whatever I want. And sooner or later, you eventually start to have mini brushes. For example, if you're using the Orb brush pack from the Blender swap, you get a lot of brushes. And to access them, you have to go, you're painting, and then you got to stop painting, move to a panel, search in the panel. You can't even read all the text very well sometimes. Grab the brush, paint, 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 go to the panel, grab the other one, paint, 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 go to the panel again, change, and it becomes tedious. So we're currently making a system where you can just point and click inside the shelf with the brushes in its own separate panel to make it a little bit faster to toggle between the different brush settings that you want. So that's coming to 3.4. Other things that's coming from Blender is quite a bit, really. New operator, UV align rotation. That's cool. Yeah, there's some new UV operator stuff. So I haven't actually gone through the commits yet, but we know that there are a huge ton of new nodes in geometry nodes, which is coming. So if you're learning geometry nodes, I recommend you get up to speed because, okay, most of the, what's it called? The capture attribute nodes have been split up into different nodes, 3 new nodes, 3 or 4, and they're all now located in different areas. So that's changed. We also have new mesh topology nodes, which is kind of interesting to get different types of system for modeling, which is really cool. There's a whole bunch of those nodes as well, and a lot more. So let me just take a closer look. Is closed. How do we get the dates again? And have you guys heard of the... I haven't gone through the commit logs this week, so I don't know what's new this week. But as far as I know, they're already starting to work on simulation nodes already. So is type on in title. Okay, so here's a little trick. Blender's also on GitHub, but they have a clone, but you can also filter what are the things that they have committed since a certain date. So if you want to see the things that they're adding to the system, you can by looking at, where is it? There we go. Created, updated, closed. So this little bit of code that says closed, you can have the year 2022 and the month, the last version. When did the last version come out? So then downloads, we usually set these by date. This came out on the 12th of October. Really? Was that recently? Okay. 10th, 12th. Oh, more than. Okay, so we got the new sculpt panel, which is coming in, which is kind of nice. Another thing that we fixed inside of Bforartists is the right-click menu. So that now, for example, if I'm editing something, and I just, usually in Bforartists we had double right-click to make the thing work, and then right-click to rotate. Now we just made it all just one right-click to set up the context menu. Same with all of the editors. So now it's a bit more standard. I don't know why we deviated from that, but earlier the hotkey map actually had a problem with that. So we fixed that. Another thing that we did is we've added better library override systems, and we've added the asset library as a default. So the first time that you open up Bforartists, in this version you won't see it, but the first time you open it, the default library is now included with the static meshes, lights, and different things like that, and that is now a default part of the first startup. So you can just change the library and get to work with some free materials and other things like that. So that's now a default, which is kind of nice. Another thing that we got added is just a whole bunch of bug fixes, a new context menu for the NLA. There's also some new features with sculpting, which means you can auto mask by curvature, auto mask by normals, and different types of things. So you can sculpt in like the grunge, you can sculpt in just the corners and things like that using this masking system. You can also do the same for grease pencil and sculpting. We've got a new copy and paste UV inside the UV editor, which is kind of interesting. So here in the UV editor, which is a new operator, which is actually getting some love from Blender. So now you can copy and paste your UVs from different areas. So that's kind of nice. And also, I think there's a couple of other select linked or shortest path of different, no, that might be an old one. Okay, so we've got that new thing. We've got a new image info geometry node. So the image info geometry node is a node that comes in from Blender, and this image, basically if we make a new one, let's see if I can find it. Search image info. So the image info node, which is I think is really awesome. You can add in an image, you can choose the frame that you want, it can tell the FPS, the frame count, if it has an alpha, the height and the width. This is super useful for different things. I wish the shader nodes and compositor had this. Hopefully they add it to the other editors. We also got, so that's kind of new, extrude along normals. No, that's an issue that we found. So another thing that we also found out is the transfer attribute has two new nodes. So let's take a closer look at what changed. So basically the transfer attribute now is the sample index node, the sample nearest node, and yeah, those two nodes are the two new ones that we have. So the index and nearest, one is based on a distance or a position, and the other one is based on the index of your attributes. I'm still trying to figure it out, but we've already created documentation for these nodes based on the basic things that we do know, and that's already up in the internet, on the GitHub really. So another thing that we added as well is there's the new curve normals node from geometry nodes, the new self object node, the new curve topology nodes, which I showed earlier, the new UV samples on the surface node, and the sample nearest surface node, which is another one from the transfer attributes, and the whole mesh topology category. So all of those nodes, this big bunch of nodes that we can add, is also being added to 3.4. And another interesting thing that is being added to 3.4 is the ability to duplicate linked of your nodes. And on top of that, there's the ability of adding in your node trees from the asset library, which takes a moment to load, but once it's done, for example, I could use this geometry node supports, and I will be able to append from the asset library directly from the add menu. So now I just loaded up geometry nodes from another scene into this particular object. So you can create your own geometry nodes trees. And the cool thing is, if you use the categories from the asset library as the same categories inside the add menu, these nodes will be added to the bottom of this particular menu, which is kind of handy. So instead of going into the asset browser and loading up, for example, the geometry nodes thing and then dragging and dropping them, you can just use the Shift A menu or search for them inside of the actual panel here. So if I search for GN, here it is, the supports, which is coming in from another library down here, which is actually this one here. So geometry nodes, I don't know, oh, there we go, it's loading the library. I'm still in a 3.5 build, so the library sometimes does not refresh. So here it is. Here is the asset library inside of the asset that we have there. We can drag and drop as well. So that's coming. That's kind of an interesting new concept. Another concept is shift duplicating a copy of the file. So for example, a linked file. So this is appended, and we see this little number here. It says, the little number says this thing is linked. So now up here in the menu, let's show the menus. Underneath node, sorry, the add menu is still loading. I think they're still working on the performance of that. So here we have this one called duplicate linked. So the duplicate linked node, as you can see, now we have 4 different users of the same node. If I just do a normal duplicate, that's because it's showing the actual panel. But technically, like, these are linked data blocks or groups. But in this case, I can copy this, or I can copy Alt-D to copy. In this case, I can't do it because it's a node group, so it only works for node groups. But I can duplicate linked, similar to what I would do with like in the 3D viewport with geometry that I would want to duplicate multiple times. So that's new inside of 3.4, the duplicate linked node. There's a new dot dash modifier for the grease pencil outline. There's also a couple other overlays for the UV editor, which is new. And we also have, what else do we have? A couple of fixes everywhere. We've done a lot of fixes for Bforartists at the moment. And last but not least, another geometry nodes thing coming in is the new distribute points volume node. So you can distribute points inside of a volume instead of just on the surface of an object, which is kind of handy. So those are the new things coming in 3.4. The node wrangler with the viewer node is super handy. The updates to adding the asset browser into the actual geometry nodes. I don't know if this works in shaders yet. The new brush panels for with Bforartists, so that you're able to access your sculpting and hopefully grease pencil. Hopefully you get that finished by the time 3.4 comes out. And with that, I guess we're good to go. Just to give you an idea of the brush panel. We've talked about this earlier. So there we go. And also Bforartists has also started to use Blender 3.5, which comes with also a lot of optimizations inside the drawing, inside of the geometry, inside of sculpting, inside of texture painting, inside of the valuations inside of geometry nodes. In general, Blender 3.5 is way more performant than most other versions of Blender ever before. So performance is going to be a big key aspect that's coming. And obviously there's also the new experimental features which you can use. For example, if you're using the viewport compositor inside the rendering, you can actually use the compositor real time inside the viewport to kind of help you.
Wait, is compositor already in 3.4 master?
Yes, it's an.
Will
It's
will
not.
it
It's still
be-
experimental, right? You have to turn it on. Like, it's an experimental thing, but it exists. You can use it, and
So
I
if
have
you
used
use
it.
normal Blender, it isn't. So if 3.4 comes out, it won't be there because experimental features aren't in release builds.
They are. You just have to turn it on, and to do that, you have to go into your user preferences
No, it's like
and turn on the developer
experimental builds.
extras. No, it's
Default
built inside the
Blender,
master.
It's like if in the release build, it's just like debugging tools.
They don't add the
Just
developer
debugging.
extras?
No, like under the developer extras, there are debugging tools in the in the release version.
Why would they do that?
Magic, I don't know.
Maintenance overhead for some reason. Oh well. So in Bforartists, you can use the Blender experimental stuff with a next release without a problem. You just got to turn on developer extras, go to the experimental tab, and pick and choose what you want. I highly recommend you turn on the full frame compositor to get 4 times the speed of, 4 to 10 times faster nodes to some degree. I recommend you turn on the real-time compositor because it's very useful. The extended asset browser is also useful for more assets inside the asset browser. It's not 100% compatible. Everything else I would consider not necessary yet, but it's kind of interesting. And also 3.4 comes in when it comes to overriding your data. You got to keep in mind that when you override data, so for example, if I have this collection, where's the collections? Here it is. And if I load up this building here, for example, I turn off the instance because I don't want to instance the collections. We'll link that. And inside the scene, if I want to override this particular collection here, I can go inside Object, I can go to Library Override, and I can make. Or I can right click on it, and I can make the library override with selected and content, which is everything, which is kind of nice. So once I override something, it overrides everything very nicely in a very clean way, much better than it used to with 3.3. So the library override system is a lot more predictable and stable, and also more robust than in 3.3. So I highly recommend the new workflow. And just to let you know in the future, Bforartists is also working on this panel here of appending linking. We're turning that into buttons instead of this drop down. So it's a little bit easier to like pick and choose which method you want to actually make your linking or your appending of the asset library a little bit easier. Instead of going, hey, I want to add this. So click, drop down, add. Hey, now I want to link this. Oh, I gotta click, hit on link, and then go. Instead, I could just go click here on the button, and it will change to the mode that I need. Save a click. And there we go. So that's what's new. And with that, we can move on to the next topic, I suppose.
The Android report and repair shop.
Oh, and Plebe says the add-on, the node that's been replaced, which is now sample, is not the capture attribute, but the transfer attribute, and also nearest. You're right. And Plebe mentions the curve topology nodes look super useful. Not sure how they're going to be used though. I said it correct later. Thanks, Plebes. I should pay attention to the chat more. So yeah, lots of cool new stuff for geometry nodes these days, let me tell you that. I'm not sure if Blender will be adding in their simulation nodes by the end of this year in the next couple of weeks. But the rumor is that the next release will be happening within the first week or 2 weeks of December, which is very soon. Which means I have to get ready to do DevOps. Everything that is added to Blender, we have also added it in documentation for Bforartists. So if there is no documentation in Blender for the new nodes, there will be documentation in Bforartists. Shmuel has mentioned that most of these new mesh topology nodes, or the curve topology nodes, might not be as useful as the mesh topology nodes, but they will still be useful. I agree. But the new add menu is very slow with the asset library, let me tell you that. I wish there was a way to turn it off by accident when not necessary. So mesh topology and curve topology. The curve topology is offset point and curve, curve of point, and points of curve. Yeah, offset, point, and curve. Let me just double check if my documentation for this is good. Where's my Bforartists page? Here it is. It's in the manual. Geometry nodes. I may need to update some things. Where would it be? Because in the next release, I still have to compile this documentation. In 3D stuff, Bforartists, development, manual. Here we go. Tool shelf, sidebar, image editor, compositor, geometry nodes. So mesh topology and curve topology. Here it is. I mean, the documentation that we have is pretty rudimentary, pretty basic, but it's still 1,000 pages more than Blender. Yeah, super rudimentary right now. Oh well. So basically, they're having a discussion here in the chat. It didn't add too much that you couldn't do before. It just makes things a little bit easier. Offset and curve sounds great. He has a working version before, Shmuel is saying, but he's, which is useful for comparing the points before and after a certain index, I suppose. You can really just add or subtract from the index of that. In this case, he made a system to wrap. So that's cool. Nice. So without further ado, I have not much time left, but I did want to walk through some layout with you. So I hope you guys are excited about the new version of Blender 3.4. Obviously, there's a lot of other things which I probably overlooked. For example, new sculpt brushes, new grease pencil line art updates, performance under the hood for cycles and Eevee and development for Eevee Next, which is coming on piece by piece. There's a whole bunch of other factors concerning how they draw the geometry in the viewport so it runs faster. I personally think 3.5 is faster, like it actually feels faster, loads faster, runs faster, just handles things faster, except for the asset library loading up here. But other than that, there's lots of little tweaks here and there, and lots of bug fixes, obviously, so a lot more stable. I mean, it's still got some kinks to iron out at the moment, but it is interesting. And I guess we can move on. Hello, Salmon. Nice to meet you here. Okay, so let's get into layout. I'm going to load up the scene that I've been working on yesterday, and I'll give you a quick explanation of the next shot that I'll be setting up. Last week, if you remember, layout was the process of taking the props, the characters, the lighting, and the environment, and using the story as a guideline or storyboard to create your scene. So if you weren't here last week, I think most of you were actually, we started doing a brief layout of shot 7, and now I've just recently created a layout of shot number 1, almost ready for rendering. So I took the city that my partner created, very proud, and using that I managed to set up some cameras to start working on the story. And I'm going to load where I'm at in the story. So the first part of the story is basically looking over the city, seeing the city in the light as the sun goes down. It's now becoming more and more like the night. And the next shot is we're on the street, and on the street we see some traffic lights. And the shot after that is we see people lined up outside of a club, getting out of cars or getting out of their drones, getting ready to go. So we have a character, her name is Kirsten, and we have the drones. Probably I need to work on making the drone a bit more detailed and interesting. And I need to recreate this traffic light scene, and I need to recreate, which could be in the same scene as this particular street that I'm going to work inside of the city. Obviously, I could use like this concept of an airport, use a concept of a club outside of all these bright lights, or a street in New York, something like that. I also used Dream Studio to generate some ideas. More or less works, more or less doesn't, but the one that really spoke to me was this one, which I really like. So let's begin. So let's get into the camera of the last shot. Still compiling the shaders, here they are. Let's go full screen. And let's just do, it's going to run slowly because I'm streaming and my computer is not powerful, but basically I added traffic. Is it still compiling? The scale of the city is huge. It's maybe 10 kilometers wide, at least. This particular downtown area. Actually, we can probably see it like this. So drone flows over the camera, and if we go into rendered mode, we can see it start flying over into the neon lights of the city down below. So that's basically where I'm at. Let's just go to the last frame. I should probably drop the samples, maybe it'll give me a better life. Yeah, it's too high, so 2 samples. And also, my shadows are probably way too high. So I'm going to drop it down to 64. And cascade shadows to 64. Well, at least we get some frames. So I'm having fun with this shot here because the colors are super bright and it's really interesting. And this is the type of tone that we're going to work with. So if we go back inside of our view here, let me explain what I'm doing right now. So if I'm in my scene view here, I have created all of my shots. 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. The shots that I need. A typical film can have up to 1,000, 2,000 shots. A typical short film could have between 50, 100 shots. Typical visual effects film could have 3,000 to 10,000 shots sometimes, depending on the film's cuts and scenes and things like that. So when you hear a visual effects studio say, hey, we composited over 120 shots for the Marvel films, well, that's great. You did 10% of the film. But 120 shots is a lot. Right now, I just have 7. And because it's more of an arty music video. So I'm going to go to shot number 2. And in shot number 2, if we take a closer look around the city, this is the base city that we have. Here's the sun. Here's the base city. And we got some things from the buildings that we have, and this particular area here is where the drone is actually flying down onto the street. So here we have some streets, and with that I can go into my common folder, and maybe I can pull in some files from the scene, the previous scene. So let's take a closer look here. So in this scene I've divided the folders into 4 subgroups. One is called the set, the other one is called the animation, volume, and the lights. So let me just quickly organize everything. Make sure everything's in its correct folder. Inside the set, these are like additional buildings and things like that, including the lights and things. So I have additional lights from the scene here. Whoops, a really big scene. And these gray eggs, they're actually my volumetric pieces. So if I go back into my 3D view, you can see that it's creating this painterly effect inside of the scene. So it's kind of like a 3D paint effect that I have in the scene. That's what I called my sunny rain effect for the painterly. I don't need that for now, so I can just hide it and save on performance. So a common thing that I like is this ground plane. So I'm going to shift the ground plane into the common collection. No, and let me just hide the common. So other pieces that are from the common, other pieces that I could use from this particular scene is maybe this building and this building. Put that into the common as well. And the traffic, I'm going to keep the traffic separate for now. And all of this stuff is just additional pieces for that particular shot, so that when I load up the next shot or scene to render, these will not load into the RAM because I have not linked them into the scene. So each shot you can show and hide different pieces of your scene and your layout technically using a sense of a common collection for all of the common shots and a separate collection with the additional pieces that you need. Additional lighting, the animation, and the actual special effects and things that you need. In this case, you can keep things relatively performant. So now we're in scene 2 and we're ready to rebuild this shot. So if we remember correctly, there's a jet that comes down through these bridges here into the street. So we need to create a street and figure it out. So this key building has been really interesting, and the building behind it I think is really cool. So I like this building here. So I might actually pretend we could come in down at the ground level, for example, and work on a street down here. So we're going to go into the assets, just use the attribute view, go inside the props, check out my city props, wonder why it's not loading. Oh, it's still loading up here. If you don't see your assets, typically you should be able to hit refresh. I think this is a problem with 3.5. Like it doesn't remember the last time it refreshed a scene, and it refreshes every single time almost, and sometimes it doesn't. I think the next build coming this weekend should fix that, hopefully. Yes, the library needs so much work, and they made it worse by making it work in the geometry nodes now. It was better before. Unfortunate. There we go, finally. So now we've got some buildings, we've got some street lamps. We can use like this footpath thing and work that. So I'm going to use go inside the create collection, scene 2, set, drag and drop, and let's start creating. So as you can see, whoa. Everything's really small. So because everything is so small, we can actually be really creative with what we're doing. I'm going to link this too. So this is like a street front that I'm using. Kind of show the base of the street. So I can use that as kind of like the base of the building. There it is. I can use this as a footpath. Bring it around. And since we're only focusing on a small part of the city, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go inside of my second camera, and I'm going to start angling my camera in the view that I want to kind of understand kind of where I want to look. So for example, I'm going to use this sign here as like a temporary focus point, and I'm going to start like thinking about the shot. So I kind of want to show that this world is really big behind the actual street light. So I'm thinking, this is where we start to explore. So if this light is, for example, a street light, let's imagine it's a street light. We can zoom in. In this case, okay, so if I want to see more, this is where you need to think about your camera lenses. So for example, the smaller the lens, the focal length, the more angular the perspective feels, but the bigger the world feels. This also distorts the character face, but for like introductory shots or lookouts or cutaways where you like look around the world, for example, you can see that the world is absolutely massive compared to using a very wide lens. So for example, a very nice lens for faces is like 85mm. It's really, really pretty. And 85mm will make the bokeh around this of the city look almost like cinematic Marvel. Like Marvel loves to do this, where they have a really big lens and they spin around the character like the superhero, and they use like 100mm, 120mm, maybe even 150mm, and they spin this camera like from a helicopter around this character, which makes it look very flat. But this really makes the character's head and shape look super, super heroic, and the background really out of focus. The The Transformers guy. Who's that director from Transformers? What's his name? He uses this technique often as well. Hey, Misty Ann, thanks for saying that in Twitch, sorry. Thanks for that. So, forget that guy's name. Anyway, he does this technique often. So in this case, you got to think about the lenses. The larger the lens, the flatter your image will look, but the less that you will see. So this is really good for your character faces and acting. But the smaller the lens, the larger the world looks, but the crazier the perspective. So in this case, my goal is to make the world look really big, really detailed and framed. Michael Bay, yes, that's the word. Thanks, Kinda Drunk. So Michael Bay uses like those lenses around his robots and things, the characters. So if this is the light, yeah, yeah, quite right, Slink. The lenses, that's right, something up to 300, 400 millimeters. Ugh, these lenses are so expensive. The camera can cost maybe a couple grand, but the actual lenses will cost 1,200 millimeters. Wow. The lenses is what makes cameras in cinema expensive. And the ones that are dynamic are very expensive. So yeah, that lens, Marty, thanks for that data. The 1,200 millimeter lens can cost up to 50 grand to 90 grand as the original price. So the camera is going to cost you a couple grand, maybe 12 grand for a really nice one, but then the lens is what really makes your camera expensive. I'm Kinda Drunk asks if they accept kidneys. I don't know. But in 3D, the cameras are free, so you could use whatever lens you want. Okay, so this shot here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a very nostalgic lens, which is going to be either 18 millimeters from the 70s, or a 20 millimeter from later on in the 80s. These were the common lenses of household cameras, for example. I think, and it looks pretty good. Maybe 18 millimeters is nice. Okay, so I like this particular shot mainly because the building on the left and the right kind of looks like a frame of this particular area, and this bridge kind of looks like something to look at here. So this particular street, now I can actually, now that I have my camera and I have my idea, I can now focus on working on the actual detail of this particular shot. So I'm going into the 3D view so I can see what I'm looking at here. With a lens of 1.2 meters. Yeah, the sky's your limit with 3D. You can use whatever lens type that you want.
Trace, I dare to pronounce the last number.
Which number? The last one?
Yeah.
12 million meters? That's a very big lens, the size of the sun. Well, maybe not. There we go. So here's some streets in the background. I'll use this like to decorate the ground over there a little bit. So let's move it over here. And this is where I start to lay out everything that I see in the scene only. Anything else I don't want to actually, is not necessary. So for example, this particular ground area, what I could do to cheat is I can use something else. Let's go into my assets and take a look at what I have. Oh man, what's wrong with the asset browser? I might drop back to an earlier version. I hope they fix this before they release 3.4.
Ricardo, esa tarifa sugerida de venta no podía tener esos.
Just give me a second. Yeah, my girlfriend has a meeting in the background now, which actually reminds me my time has run out. So let me just quickly teach you how to recover a crash. Blender has some of the best recovery that you could see in the industry. It saves every so minutes as often as you need to a folder, and you can also have a backup of your scene. So after I've loaded everything, there we go. So now I've switched back to 3.3 or 3.4. Inside of if you go underneath the file menu, you can go to, where is it? Recover last session or recover the autosave. So if you click on the recover autosave button, it loads up your autosaves folder that you set in your preferences, and chronologically it will save each scene over itself every 2 minutes or every 3 minutes or every 5 minutes, whatever you need. So this layout file that I have here was saved at 16:14, which is 2 minutes ago. So if I hit that, I only lost 2 minutes of work. And that in Blender, I think, is one of the best professional features that I can think of when it comes to everyday work. You can always go back to your autosave folder and you can load the scene. Now, a word of warning, some add-ons do stop the autosave. So be careful of some add-ons that has OpenGL drawing or that use modal operators. For example, RetopFlow or something like that. Because if you're using these add-ons not carefully, they will break what's happening. So where were we? Here it is. And back into the camera. And we're almost practically at the same point where we left off, which is excellent in my opinion. Now we can work with that and carry on, and I can save the scene. Hit save. Once it says it's recovered, it resaves back to the original file and you're good to go. Okay, so Marty has mentioned that some lenses with an f-stop of 5.6 is the one-off price of like 90k, but an f-stop of something like 8 is cheaper, like 20k. So Slink also mentioned he has RetopFlow and that's why his autosave wasn't working. Yes, you need to turn that off. Another add-on that causes this issue is called the node map, the node minimap for the node editors. If you have it turned on, it will turn off the autosave as well. That's the free version. Another add-on that used to do this was the Looking Glass add-on, which would draw a widget in the 3D viewport. I think it doesn't cause this problem anymore. Those are the 3 add-ons that I know that causes the autosave to stop working, but just beware that some add-ons do that. Marty has mentioned as well that the autosave has saved me hours of work when you had only 2 or 3 caches. That's true. When you're rendering, I find things crash the most, or when you do simulations, or something new and weird. For example, the asset browser just now, loading incorrectly. So yeah, this is why Blender has a very good autosave system, because sometimes things are unstable. But compared to other software, Blender is mostly very stable in general, but even then it gives you the tools to not lose work. And I think that's very, very, very comfortable and nice. And I wish other professional software had this. So as a summary for today, we had a nice art piece done by Slink. We had a very beautiful concept and a tribute, a commemoration by I'm Kinda Drunk. We also had a quick sneak peek look at what's coming to Bforartists 3.4 and Blender 3.4. And we also had a quick look at starting up the layout blockout of the next shot, which I'll be using. And we had a bonus tip of how to recover your scene. If you're inside Bforartists as well, you can also add in the recover menu so that it's easier to just click and open your recovery. And so that's very nice as well. One single click instead of going up to the file menu, scrolling down, hitting the thing, and then go. You could just go up here and click. Less zigzag, less wrist problems, and we're good to go. So thank you, everyone. I want to say I'll be here next week on Friday. I want to wish you, if you're in the States, a happy Thanksgiving. And for those of you who are elsewhere in the world, I'm thankful that you joined. I hope you found this very interesting. And I do have a question on the chat. Is the director I'm talking about Michael Bay? Correct. Travis Knight? Maybe, but I didn't see him use it as much. He directed Bumblebee, right? But Michael Bay loves his wide lenses.
And explosions.
And explosions, that's right. I mean, he gets a lot of flack, but I have to admit, his action scenes and the animations on those robots are absolutely incredible. So, I'll be here, same time, same place. If you like this, feel free to connect live on Twitch or live on Discord in the voice chat as well. If you have art that you'd like to have showcased in the next episode, well, join the Bforartists Discord server and share your art. I would love to talk with you about the pieces that you do, and it's always nice to share. And next week I'll be continuing on layout. I'll be also working on preparing some character animations and things like that as I continue working on this episode to get it done sooner than later. So with that, thank you. I'll be here in the same time, same place next week, and I wish you an excellent weekend. All right, let's